I think my husband fathered my best friend's children.
This episode is beyond Reddit's pay grade. Even the like button would say, what in the actual Game of Thrones? You've been warned.
This began as a dark, intrusive thought that I could never shake off. And over the years, it has bloomed into a poison flower that infects my entire psyche. I'm a 42-year-old woman. My husband, Luke, is 43, and so is Amy. I met Luke in college, but he's known Amy since they were about 7. They did everything together and understood each other without effort. They were best friends. They've always insisted that they are surrogate siblings to each other. Naturally, I, as a new girlfriend, felt a little threatened by Amy and her closeness to Luke, but they both reassured me I had nothing to worry about. That their bond was not romantic and had never been physical. That Amy really was just the sister that Luke never had. I believed them, and it didn't take long for me to forget any and all insecurities I had about Amy. She became my friend too. She officiated our wedding. Luke and I have built a wonderful life together, and we always had a strong relationship. After we got married and moved in together, we still saw a lot of Amy, and I was fine with that. I've passed many a night on the town trying to help Amy find a man, as she has always complained about how she is unlucky in love. Luke and I started to have children after we were married, and at around the same point, so did Amy. For further context, my children are Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy's children are Tom, 17, Kaylee, 14, and twins Adam and Jenna, both 9. Now, Amy was not in a relationship at this point. She was not married. As far as I knew, she was dating, but not consistently. As Luke and I had more kids and our family grew, periodically Amy would find herself pregnant as well. It happened a few times, and Luke and I never knew anything about the fathers in question. I kind of assumed that maybe Amy was sleeping around and not keeping in contact with her one-night stands. Luke agreed this was probably the answer. While I did ask each time if Amy knew the paternity, she always said no, and she didn't seem that worried about the idea of raising kids on her own, so I didn't pester her. Of course, she had us to support her and to share her pregnancy milestones, so there was that. While Amy never genuinely asked for any help, of course Luke was never going to let his best friend struggle to stay afloat when she had children to raise. Financially, we are very fortunate and privileged. I have a job that pays handsomely, and Luke also had wealthy parents who already knew and loved Amy, so they were happy to provide for her. My in-laws defy all stereotypes. They are the kindest and gentlest people. So we were able to support Amy here and there, to get her somewhere to stay with her kids. People might be tempted to call her a leech, but I never saw it that way. None of us did. She needed help as a friend, and we could provide it. I also know people are going to criticize her for her lack of responsibility and question why she never used more reliable birth control. Honestly, that is a long story that I don't want to get into, because even I don't fully understand her reasoning. But it was quite important to her that she never be on birth control, and that whatever came of that choice, she would accept. It wasn't religiously motivated, I know that, but it was that degree of significance to Amy. She really did not want to take birth control. She's explained it to me more than once, but I'm still not clear on why, because I couldn't relate to the reasoning completely. Of course, Amy being Luke's best friend since they were kids, it's not unreasonable that sometimes they hang out together while I'm not there. Hey, that's fine. Sometimes I hang out with Amy one-on-one as well, though Luke does it more. She was his friend first. This included him going over to where she was staying and at times sleeping over there. Yeah, I hear you already. Was I a fool to trust him and believe nothing was going on? But for years, they presented as being these over-the-top buddies, like siblings. I didn't pick up on any vibes between them, not ever. As one can expect, our children were brought up together. Not in the same house. Our home is decently sized, but even we don't have room for 8 kids. But we made sure Amy's children met ours from a young age, and they always got along, and strong bonds of friendship have formed over the years, which was good. Especially if I'm right, and they share blood. I've been dawdling getting to the main point. Yes, I have come to suspect that Luke fathered at least one of Amy's kids, if not all of them. Frankly, I do suspect they are all his. I would never have believed my husband to be capable of such a thing, and he's given me no indication that he is the unfaithful sort. But he does spend a lot of time with Amy, and I have to confess, I cannot remember seeing her with any real boyfriend over the years. She would talk to men at bars and parties. I would try to be her wingman, and so on. But nothing ever seemed to really happen, so when she got pregnant the first time, I was curious. When it happened again, and again, I began to wonder if she had some sort of secret fella who she didn't want us to know about for whatever reason. But I couldn't think of any reason why she would hide him, especially from her children. After Carter, our youngest, was born, Luke and I agreed that the time had come for him to have a vasectomy. Amy's twins had come just a couple of years prior. Of course, after the procedure, Luke and I continued to make love, but I no longer had to think about pregnancy. Meanwhile, Amy never got pregnant again after the twins. Is it a coincidence that Luke had a vasectomy and then both of us stopped getting pregnant? I don't know. But Luke would still visit her, and he wasn't just going to see her, but checking up on her children as well. In general, I should have paid more attention to it sooner, but Luke has always acted like a father to them, especially as they've gotten older. He's the father they never had. He doesn't neglect me or our children, not one bit. He's doing double duty. On its own, the idea that he is a surrogate father to Amy's fatherless children isn't inherently suspicious. One could call it noble, but it combines with a lot of other things. There is appearance as well. I won't go into specifics of hair color, eye color, or unique physical traits, because I'd rather limit the identifying factors of the people involved and keep this whole thing as vague as possible. But suffice it to say, Amy's children, they certainly look like they could be Luke's. Kaylee has a very unusual allergy that Luke also has. The twins look very much like him, Adam in particular. The older Tom has gotten, the more of Luke I can see in his face and personality. While their race doesn't matter, the reality is that Luke is a different race than Amy, and Amy's children look pretty biracial. I could easily believe their father is the same race as Luke. Doesn't mean Luke has to be the father, but it sure adds up. I have never voiced my anxieties to either Amy or Luke. I don't want to be the bad guy, and guilty or innocent, I already know they would flatly deny my accusations and be offended and hurt by them. Imagine if that drama reached the ears of my kids or Amy's kids. Either way, Luke continues to spend time with Amy and her children, just as her children spend time with mine. I have hinted to Luke that I feel needy for more attention and wish he wouldn't give as much to Amy. But he either missed my cues or pretended that he missed them. I don't want to push this idea that he's favoring her because it's not even really true. He's never neglected me for her. I can't shake the feeling that Luke and Amy have been intimate before, likely numerous times. So far as I know, Amy never really wanted to be a mother either. She wasn't opposed to it, and when each of her children came into the world, she instantly fell in love with them. But motherhood was never really a major part of her life goals or identity. In the grand scheme of things, when we would talk about the future, she would sometimes mention a husband and children, but it never seemed like something she had her heart particularly set on. So, I don't think this is a case of Luke just giving Amy children. I doubt that was the motive for the infidelity. That would have been a side effect. I've been letting this go and turning a blind eye for years. It was a dark thought in the back of my mind after Kaylee's allergy was discovered, but I dismissed it. Even felt ashamed for thinking that. Got worse after the twins were born. I dismissed it again. Then, when Amy stopped having babies, I wanted to feel reassured by that. But Luke had gotten a vasectomy, so if anything, that made my anxiety worse. There have been nights that I wished the twins were younger, that they had come along after Luke's procedure. It's been twisting me into knots for a long time, but I don't want to be the one who rips our family apart, especially since, technically, I could be wrong. Except now I'm very afraid, because in the last few months, we've had a new development in our kids' social circle. Tom, Amy's eldest, asked Sophie out. Sophie, my eldest. She's really blossomed over these last few years and become quite the outspoken beauty, so I'm not shocked to see she's getting male attention. But Tom asking her out had me thrown. Sophie said no, but only because I'm quite protective when it comes to her exploring dating, and she knew she'd have to ask me first. I could tell she was flattered and intrigued by his interest and wanted to say yes. She approached me to talk to me about it. Bless my girl. She did everything right. I think she expected I would see things her way and agree that she could date Tom. Much to her surprise, I very firmly said no. That caused a bit of conflict. She didn't even want to date him that badly. She just couldn't understand why she wasn't allowed to. And I couldn't explain it to her. All I could come up with was, he's too old for you, which he is, but it's not really about that. When Amy and Luke heard, I was so very curious to see what their reactions would be. If either of them had agreed with Sophie and tried to convince me that the two of them should be allowed to date, I think I would have been relieved, and taken that as proof that I was wrong about something going on between them. Wrong about who fathered Amy's children. But the ambiguity continued. They took my side. Both of them put their foot down, though not as fiercely as I did. Luke agreed with me, but he also worried that trying to forbid such a romance would only make Sophie want it more. He's probably right about that. Amy seemed more apathetic to the idea. She didn't want Tom to date Sophie either, and she backed me up. But I don't know. She just wasn't taking it as seriously. She seemed to think it was a fleeting crush. Well, it wasn't. In the months following those conversations, Tom would spend more and more time with Sophie. They would be alone, or with other friends, any time they possibly could. It's become abundantly clear that Tom is crazy about Sophie and wants to be with her. Oh, and he definitely wants to be physical, as I've been watching them like a hawk and noticed his eye wandering many times. And while I'm doing everything I can to kill this budding romance in the crib, I also am feeling somewhat powerless. Sophie hasn't outwardly defied me, she's still just hanging out with Tom as friends. So, forcing them to stop spending time together would be unreasonable and probably encourage more sneaking around. But I'm so afraid that they're already doing that. My nightmare is that they're secretly dating and doing God knows what when no one is looking. I've observed Tom being rather handsy with Sophie, and she presents no objection or discomfort whatsoever. And I just don't know what to say. I had considered trying to convince Sophie that Tom is like her brother, but if she doesn't see him that way, I don't really have the power to rewrite their emotional dynamic or the history of their friendship. I always saw Amy and her children as being like family, but my kids might see Amy's kids more as best friends. The problem is, of course, that if my husband has indeed been carrying on an affair over the years, and I'm right about the paternity of Amy's children, then Tom and Sophie cannot be anything more than friends under any circumstances. End of discussion. It can never happen. I feel powerless to stop it, though. Luke has apparently talked to Tom about this, as has Amy, but he is unrelenting and he won't give up on Sophie. I think she enjoys that attention and devotion. Tom has also confronted me and asked why I'm so against this when I know him very well, and I know he would be good to Sophie. I didn't know what to say other than to fall back on her being too young for him. But that won't work forever. If, God forbid, they're still attracted to each other in a few years, then they'll pursue this. And once they're legal adults, there's nothing I can do about it. Amy and Luke agree with me that Tom cannot date Sophie, but that's all they've really done. They feel just as powerless as me to prevent teen love. It genuinely feels sometimes like they've just given up and will bury their heads in the sand about this. Just do nothing and hope the feelings pass as Tom and Sophie get older. Which, yeah, they're in high school. It's unlikely Tom will be in love with Sophie forever. But my fear is that she will let him do something intimate with her before that time comes, something neither of them can take back. I am this close to opening a door I cannot close, this close to screaming at Luke that all this wouldn't be happening if he hadn't cheated on me these many years. If he hadn't been all but raising a second family with his surrogate sister behind my back. Now Luke's bastard son wants to jump our daughter, his actual sister, because as far as he knows, she's just his childhood friend. And it's all Luke and Amy's fault for what they've done. If I speak up, everything gets blown to hell. On the off chance that I am wrong, I'm a horrible monster who accused the love of my life and one of my closest friends of doing something horrible. If I'm right, it still tears our entire structure apart. The family and social unit we've become over the last several years is gone, and everyone will be stressed and upset even if Luke and I don't divorce. If I do nothing, Sophie's eventually going to sleep with Tom and be his girlfriend. I'm terrified it will happen sooner than later, or worse, that it's already happened under my nose. I hope to hell this relationship fades as they mature, but what if it doesn't? What if they wind up being together for years? What if they marry and want to get pregnant someday? And if I tell Sophie the truth about Amy's kids, then everyone else finds out too, and that's going to ruin so many lives. It would shatter my kids' perception of their father and their Aunt Amy. Luke is Owen's hero. I don't even want to think about how much this would hurt him. And what about Amy's children? They are innocent. They didn't ask for this, they don't control where they came from, and I don't want to hurt them. Admittedly, I'm not happy with Tom at the moment. A week ago, I saw him put his hand on Sophie's behind, and I wanted to knock his teeth out. But even he doesn't deserve to be burdened by the knowledge that it's his half-sister he's been fantasizing about. It's all so messed up, and I don't know what to do. I've been looking the other way and letting my husband and his best friend insult me for such a long time now. I thought I could live with it, but this business with Tom and Sophie is the line. Oh, I'm done.
Oh wow, it's going to be a Merry Christmas for all of you. Buy a DNA testing kit like 23andMe for everyone. Gift yourself a full body health examination while you're at it. Or if you're not into this, ask her son when he's over if he wants to do one with you and the kids. Just for funsies.
Oh, about a year ago, I suggested we do one of those, just to see Luke's reaction. He was very staunchly against it, didn't want the government to have our DNA, kept saying ancestry tests were a scam anyway. I brought it up to Amy, and guess which one of us she agreed with.
Is your relationship with Luke really good? Because it needs to be solid for this to work. You gotta have time where you and Luke can discuss this and literally start with how you understand it's going to create immediate tension and say you can't help but suspect something.
The thing is, I think he's aware that I know. Assuming it's true and I'm not imagining things, it's kind of been an unspoken reality for a while now.
So what do you want for you and your kids if it is what you suspect? Tom and Sophie, not dating aside, how would you want to continue? Would you leave Luke? Maybe that seems dumb to you, but you've essentially got a family with 11 people in it. It seems to be functioning. Could you be involved in that? Apologies if I'm asking insulting questions. I'm not trying to, just genuinely curious, as you've obviously thought this through a ton.
I've kept it functioning this long, mostly through denial, if I'm being honest. But if things were to be proven true and brought to light, I don't know what I would do. Leaving him is the most logical solution, but our kids are still underage and still friends with Amy's kids. It's not like there's any path forward where I never see Luke and Amy again, even if I wanted that. I know what I need to do, and I've known it for a while, but it feels impossible.
I agree. What an impossible situation. You sound like a wonderful woman. Just keeping it together for the kids. All of them, not just your biological kids. I do have a question. You said your husband is not opposed to them dating. Do you trust him to not let his daughter be intimate with her brother? It'd be really sick if he was. Are you comfortable with that truth? You're the only one with the intimate details of why you really think this is a possibility. Please, 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 for the sake of the children, at least somewhat trust your gut.
Thank you. He is opposed to it. He agrees that Tom is too old for Sophie, but part of me does worry that he'll let it happen, to protect the status quo.
They won't ever admit it to you if they've been keeping the secret this long. Plus, with all the kids involved, the only way is to do a DNA test, whatever it takes. Even if you can somehow orchestrate a 23andMe thing with Tom, all you need is the swab and to send it off, along with your daughters, and there's nothing anyone can do. You can feign ignorance and ask what the big deal is if they get upset. It's just a little fun to see what countries our genetics come from, right? Or if you can somehow do it in secret, then do that. Then whatever the results say, you can decide what the outcome should be.
If this is going on, then they already know that I know. They won't buy my innocent act.
But why do you care what they think about you? You have done nothing wrong. Calling out their BS is not wrong. You don't have to pretend you are innocent. You are in this situation regardless of what you do, except for violence. What if his so gentle and generous parents are racists, and they didn't want them to be a couple and he used you all this time? Say you're doing a COVID test for the kids because it's going around lately, and you swab 2 of the kids for 23andMe?
This is freaking genius. Thank you.
If you're wrong and say nothing, no harm, no foul on all accounts. This is a win. If you're wrong and say something, there's a chance your marriage and social unit falls apart. But given the optics how close your husband and his friend are and the risk of sibling dating, I'd say there's a reasonable chance it doesn't fall apart if your husband understands your point of view, especially if you discuss it discreetly with your husband first, and voice your concerns about the kids dating. This is a soft win. If you're right and say something, your husband and his friend get found out. The marriage and social unit falls apart. And it's all their fault, and you protect the kids from potential Game of Thrones shenanigans. This is a win. If you're right and say nothing, there's a serious chance the kids engage into this forbidden behavior without knowing. Also, your husband's infidelity continues to go unaddressed. Consider how the kids will feel in however many years' time if this all comes out after the fact. Someone is going to do an ancestry test for the fun of it one day, and the truth will come out. This is a huge loss. On the face of it, you have an impossible decision to make. If you're able to discreetly do DNA tests, check swab, I'd suggest you do this. It'll give you the proof you need to raise your concerns with your husband. If it comes back positive, I don't know what your local laws are about this though, so be careful. My personal opinion, everything you've said screams to me that your instincts are right. If you say nothing, the kids will end up the biggest losers in this. And I'm sorry to say it, but so will their kids. Can you sleep soundly at night if you say nothing and that comes to pass? I discuss with your husband discreetly and approach it from the perspective of the possible incestuous aftermath.
Royal A.I.
Reddit won't let me post a link, so you'll have to find the original post on my account page. Sorry for the inconvenience. I could summarize the original, but these posts are already quite long as it is, and frankly, the TLDR is in the title anyway. So here goes. First of all, wow. I did not expect my post to get as much traction as it did. I was half worried that someone in my family or social circle might find it, especially when someone alerted me that the post had been shared to the Book of Faces. But as far as I can tell, no one in my family has seen it. I want to thank all of the kind commenters who wished me well. To those who were more frustrated with my indecision, I get it. But I was operating with an uncertain situation, and the stakes were incredibly high. I feel like no matter what choice I made, something could and likely would go wrong. I've spent the last 5 years imagining different scenarios based on different ways I could go about this, if I ever decided to act on it. To everyone who was clamoring for an update, I have one for you. I previously said that I was going to do a secret DNA test, that I had decided on that course of action. In the end, I couldn't go through with it, and now I am regretting that, because the window to do so has essentially closed. I felt like it would be out of line for me to do that to another person's child behind their back. Ethically, it was dicey. I've since consulted with my lawyer, as many commenters suggested, and she advised me against doing so, because no matter what the results were, it would make me look bad in a potential divorce proceeding. But I really wish I had done it anyway, and just not told anyone. Because I really badly need to know, and I still don't know for sure. Likewise, I wanted to tell Sophie in confidence, but the more I thought about it, even that seemed over the line. Like I had no right to plant such toxic ideas in her mind about her father, without even talking to him first. So what I ended up doing was confronting Luke and Amy. Many comments suggested this as well. I finally told both of them that we needed to have a serious talk. It felt counterproductive to approach just one of them because I figured they would tell the other about what happened in their own words before I could prepare my own. I wanted them both to hear what I had to say. Once all the kids were at school, I laid down all of my suspicions and the reasons. I made it clear how much I love both of them, but a combination of clues had led me to notice the similarities between Luke and Amy's children, and I didn't even list all of them in the original post. For example, Luke has been a sleepwalker in the past, so have Sophie, Tom, and Adam. I said over and over how much they meant to me and how I didn't want to believe it, but the thought had crept into my mind in the past. How I had dismissed it before, but now, with Tom and Sophie having crushes on each other, it became necessary to pose the question. So I asked if they had ever crossed the line, if Luke had ever been unfaithful, if there was even the slightest possibility that any of Amy's children were his. I was just trying not to cry. Well, they reacted exactly as I would have expected. Their responses were perfect, and so very well rehearsed. I genuinely can't tell if it was honest emotion or powerful gaslighting. Amy was more upset than Luke, or at least more outwardly upset. She was angry, offended at the accusation. Luke just seemed heartbroken by it. Maybe they were just acting, but I don't know. Somehow, they had reasonable responses to all of the points I brought up. They asked questions I didn't know how to answer. I had never objected to them having alone time before. Why did it suddenly bother me now? Do Amy's children really resemble Luke that much? Or are things like hair color pretty basic traits to have in common? The whole family had always treated Amy and her kids as part of our unit, and I had previously commended Luke for stepping up and being a father figure to Amy's kids, since they didn't have one. Why was I now saying it was a bad thing? What exactly did I want them to do? How could I think such a thing about them? Why had I waited so long to say something? Luke was more understanding than Amy. He respected my feelings, or at least he acted like he did. Amy appeared to feel more betrayed by what I said. I ended up apologizing several times, even though I'm sure I didn't do anything wrong. Luke also apologized for anything he'd done to indicate he was unfaithful. But I realized what's at stake here, so instead of going automatically into defense, I knew I had to push through. I asked Amy more pointedly that, if not Luke, who had fathered her children? She snapped back that it was none of my business, and I could tell she was in no mood to get personal or vulnerable with me after my accusations. I'm not proud to say that I lost my temper, but I said that after everything we had done for her and her children, she could at least give such information. As it was not a lot to ask, also, if not that, she owed it to us. Amy shouted back that I had never done anything for her, that it was Luke and his parents who had kept her afloat all these years, not me. She went on a longer tirade about how I had always acted superior to her, which I don't believe I did. Luke did his best to calm her down, but the room was still fraught with tension. I don't know, Reddit. I just don't know. It's driving me to the edge of madness. It all doesn't matter, though. There is a way to be certain, of course. Not certain of my husband's fidelity, but of the paternity of Amy's children. So I asked Luke, for my own peace of mind, for the sake of our daughter and for our family, if he could please get a DNA test done, a paternity test. I went on to say that I knew he disliked and distrusted such things, but that I really needed this. I could see the pain in Luke's eyes. Maybe it was an act, but he did seem genuinely hurt that I was asking for this, that him giving me his word that he had always been faithful was not enough for me. But he very reluctantly agreed to participate in a DNA test. Unfortunately, Amy did not, and that's where we hit a roadblock. I was afraid of this. But Amy was infuriated at the whole concept and told me in no uncertain terms that I would not be getting samples of her children's DNA. And basically told me to fuck off for asking, several times in several colorful variations. I pressed Luke, and honestly, he was a bit useless, but probably right. He tried to convince Amy, half-heartedly, but she wouldn't hear of it, and he kind of shrugged to me when I pushed him for further support. Because he can't force her to get the tests done, if she refuses, that's really a dead end. Trust me, it is. I looked into this quite a bit and consulted with my lawyer. The problem is, Luke could, in theory, petition the court to demand a paternity test for Tom and the others. The issue is that, to do this, he'd essentially be claiming he slept with Amy and he believes her children to be his. That would be the version of events he'd be maintaining and has to fight for. But Luke has staunchly insisted that nothing ever happened with Amy, that he never cheated on me. Whether or not he's being honest about this is another story, but he'd essentially has to go on record and make a claim that he isn't prepared to make. He is quite certain the children aren't his, and he has no intention of fighting for custody of them. So no judge is going to compel Amy to submit samples of her children's DNA. Tom is also old enough that his consent would be a factor. If both he and Amy refuse to participate in the test, it's unlikely that Luke would have a case. He'd have to target one of Amy's younger children, like, say, one of the twins. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to take his best friend to court to prove something that, in his words, he already knows isn't true. Luke is asking me to please just let this go and trust him, because pursuing this will fracture everything. And according to my lawyer, it's not realistic anyway. For Luke to establish paternity, he would need to admit to an affair in the first place, and he's not doing that. And if he did, that would pretty much be all the proof I needed to be certain, even if I'd need more in a court case. I pestered him further about Tom and Sophie, insisted that I didn't want them dating. Luke agreed, and apparently Amy still agrees. Luke plans to have a talk with Tom and activate protective Papa Bear mode. Among other things, he's going to remind Tom that in a couple of months when he turns 18, him being intimate with Sophie will literally be a crime. I Wouldn't actually press charges against him, as I know he'd never do anything against Sophie's will, but I'm not above implying the threat. Thankfully, Luke isn't either. I did ask him if he'd be open to potentially swiping a sample of Tom's DNA to do a private paternity test, but he was very hesitant about the idea. Like me, he viewed it as unethical. He also pointed out that if we were to do this and Amy found out, it would mean the end of our friendship with her, most likely. Things are, Luke believes, still in a salvageable endgame where Amy and I could reconcile and become friends again, and I can see how much he wants this to happen. But if I did a DNA test on Tom behind Amy's back and she found out, I think she would hit the roof. Though I'd be very interested to see the results. After this talk, Luke ended up going to see Amy and spending the night. I know all of you are cringing and throwing up your hands, and trust me, I was openly against it. That was a very long conversation, but he was adamant that he needed to perform damage control. So they spent the night together, with Luke maintaining that nothing happened. I did not sleep a wink, and I kept texting him for updates. So far as I can tell, Amy will cool off, but she needs a little time. Luke and I talked things over when he came back the next morning. It was an emotional conversation, and we ended up agreeing to take the kids, our kids, not Amy's, to visit their grandparents for a few days. It was an impromptu visit, but we've done it before, and they were delighted to have us. I just really wanted our family to spend some time together away from Amy's side of the family, so to speak. I always love getting to see my in-laws. I'll refer to them as Jim, 75 male, and Kat, 67 female. I know Reddit is famous for stories about the mother-in-law from hell, but in my life that couldn't be further from the truth. I feel safe with them. To the point that when they took notice of how distant Luke and I were from each other, I finally relented and confessed my fears. I told them of my anxiety that Amy and Luke were having an affair, and that Amy's children might be his. Here's where things got more interesting. When I told them my worries, Kat just gave Jim this pointed look and did a big dramatic sigh. So it turns out Kat has had similar worries to mine and genuinely suspected over the years that Luke and Amy were closer than they'd ever admit, that they had crossed the line in the past. Jim, on the other hand, simply refuses to even consider the idea. He has always insisted that Kat is seeing things that aren't there. He maintains that Luke and Amy are like siblings and would never do such a thing. Kat thinks his stance on this is naive and that even if she and Jim had taken Amy in and loved her like a daughter, that didn't mean Luke viewed her as a sister or that she viewed him as a brother. But Jim just continued to insist that this is what they are and had always been. I could tell that he and Kat have already had this conversation before, and they kept going in circles, with Kat getting exasperated. She pointed out that surrogate siblings or not, Luke and Amy were not actually brother and sister, so nothing was stopping them from being physical together if they felt a mutual attraction. At that point, Jim just sighed and walked away from the conversation. So yes, Kat has privately wondered if Amy's children weren't fathered by Luke, which is part of why she has always treated them as her grandchildren. Which was never something that I minded, to be clear. I also don't mind that Kat never voiced these concerns to me. She had no proof, and she saw far less of Luke and Amy's closeness in our adult lives than I did. As for the kids, they're doing all right. I don't know what Amy told her children, but I think the general consensus, the official version of events, is that Amy and I had a fight and need a break from each other. That's what Luke and I told our children, and when pressed for more information, Luke did defend me and shut down the questions, saying it wasn't their business. I don't know if Amy kept to that version of events, but my children and her children have each other's phone numbers and social media, so they've presumably still been in contact over the last 2 days. I think my kids would have kept Amy's kids in the loop on the updates, and if Amy had told them anything else significant, they would have relayed that information to my kids. After all, we know Sophie and Tom are very close. I did try and talk to Sophie about that more. But the timing was off because Sophie rejected my advice and interpreted my reinforced reluctance as being connected to my fight with Amy. She maintained that she wasn't dating Tom. To what degree that's actually true, I don't know. But she was going to remain close friends with him, and while she isn't usually a disobedient child, she made it very clear that she was putting her foot down on this one. And, to be fair, I can't really justify trying to separate them or forbid them from being friends. They've known each other for years. Luke has my back on them not being allowed to date, but he wouldn't have my back on them not hanging out anymore. I wish I had a more definitive update. If anything significant happens in the next few days, I can let you guys know. I'm mostly just kicking myself for not having done the test in secret, even for my own peace of mind, as now I feel like I'm locked out of the only way to get definitive proof one way or the other.
He had to do damage control by staying the night with her. That's because she's his girlfriend. I really don't see any other interpretation of that.
Seriously? Husband knows wife has been living this belief that he's cheating with the friend, and rather than stay with his wife to reassure her and do damage control with his wife, he finds it more important to stay with the friend and do damage control with her, leaving wife alone all night? That's so gross. I absolutely do not believe Amy and Luke. Amy is being gross and could put this all behind them so easily by just doing the DNA test. She wouldn't even have to tell her kids why, but still adamantly refuses. And Amy can't understand OP's thought process or reasoning at all, instead just explodes. With no good defense other than the gaslighting? Yeah, nah. I hope this story is either fake or exaggerated, or OP gets the truth soon and can move on.
They spent the night together. OP, come on. That's not acceptable. They're definitely a couple. Honey, maybe the kids aren't Luke's, but he's definitely cheating on you with Amy, even if it's emotionally. Being honest with you, I firmly believe that they do have an affair, and it's not just emotional. Even you know that another person from the outside who sees everything directly also believes that the kids are his and that he has a thing for Amy. I think it's time to put your foot down and reconsider your marriage. You expressed your feelings to both of them, and he ran to spend the night with her, to make sure she could get over this. Do you realise how disrespectful it is that your husband would rather put another woman before you? When you told him you feel insecure and paranoid about her.
I have been reconsidering a great many things these past few days, especially since the fight.
After all this, he spent the night with Amy, and somehow there's still doubt that they're sexual and the kids are his? Imagine your wife, who is basically supposed to be your best friend and partner in life, comes to you with these alarming concerns, and nope, you go stay at Bestie's house for the night to do damage control? Wow, what in the actual fuck?
Listen up, this is good. When I confronted my ex's friend about having an inappropriate relationship with him, she drove off without a word, looking upset. I confronted him as she drove away, and he got defensive. After the fight, my ex called and comforted her first and foremost. He tried to maintain their affair was only a close friendship, but I'd already seen I love yous and I miss yous texts on his phone. Didn't even have to snoop. He would text her sitting right beside me. Only once he realized I was serious about leaving did he cut her off. But as you may have guessed, it still didn't work out in his favor. That the man you married put comforting this woman over your feelings is painfully telling of where you all stand. Even if they're not having an affair, that action alone shows he has no respect for you. I'm sorry, you don't deserve this. And his relationship with his friend is at the very least inappropriate.
This hit me like a pile of bricks, to be honest, because they definitely are that close. I think in my heart, I know the affair is happening. I just latch on to any trace of evidence that it might not be because I wish it wasn't.
I think you've been so used to their nonsense that you're blinded to the fact that your husband's sleeping over at his best friend's house to appease her feelings. is complete and utter bullshit and inappropriate. In a marriage, wife wishes come first, especially when the wife has a long list of valid suspicions. For Amy to feel betrayed is wild. She should have no access to your husband. So for her to feel that she has the right to have your husband sleep over to appease her is evidence enough of cheating to me.
I think you're right. Honestly.
Yeah, well, I've been waiting for the update, and boy was it a roller coaster even for me as a stranger. I am so sorry you're going through this, but please, for the love of your sanity, I think a divorce should definitely be on the cards. I got gaslit just by reading that. My darling, from one random Australian woman on the internet, I hope you can soon find peace soon with whatever decision you make. I hope you have a support network around you. If not, my inbox is always open.
Oh, it's definitely in the cards. It's not a sure thing for the kids, but I'm very much looking into it at the moment. Thank you for the kind words.
Have you mentioned to your husband that you're considering divorce? Also, while ideally it would be avoided, at what point do you have an honest talk with your daughter about your concerns?
Sooner than later, honestly. She needs to know. I haven't used the word divorce with Luke yet, but I've alluded to the idea.
He went to console his real wife for the night. She admitted as much. She's jealous of you and your relationship status. She hates you and hides it because she wants your husband to herself.
This is my nightmare. Hey, I didn't expect to have another update so quickly. But after posting my first update, I did a lot of thinking about my kids. I ultimately decided that whatever else happened, I needed to warn Sophie about the reality of our situation and do so immediately. To hell with Luke and whatever that meant for him. To hell if that meant all of the kids learned of the situation. She needed to be aware of what she might be getting herself into. So I discreetly kept her out of school. We went back home. To our home, last night and this morning. I dropped everyone off and saved Sophie for last before driving right past her school and telling her that we needed to talk. Always a frightening thing for a teenager to hear from a parent, but I was quick to establish that she was not in trouble. But she needed to know the truth about why Amy and I were fighting, why her dating Tom was out of the question. I very gently explained that because of Luke's closeness to Amy and Tom's resemblance to him, I had come to suspect that perhaps Luke and Amy were intimate at some point over the years. If that was true, and there was any chance Tom's father was actually Luke, that would be a significant problem. Sophie was quiet during all of this, and even after I had stopped talking to let her respond, she paused for quite a while before she finally said that we needed to get Tom and discuss this with him as well. I had no objections, so she texted him to meet with us. They're both skipping school today, but Sophie gets straight A's and this is extremely important, so I looked the other way. Tom came to meet us, and Sophie had me relay what I told her to him as well. I apologized to him for any indication I might have given that I didn't think he was good enough for my daughter, and to both of them for not telling the truth sooner. Tom and Sophie just gave each other this oddly knowing stare. And Reddit, that's when they blew my mind. Sophie spoke first, with Tom backing her up. They revealed to me that, in fact, they had already known about Luke and Amy, or at least they had strongly suspected. Apparently, Tom has overheard conversations that are questionable, as well as overhearing the sounds of sex from Amy's room, sounds he would just as soon forget, but all signs point to Amy's lover having been Luke. Tom had wondered for a very long time, and back in January, he finally voiced his fears to Sophie. She agreed with them. She could also see a strange sort of closeness between her father and his mother. They agreed that Luke was likely having an affair. They agreed that because of Kaylee's allergy, Luke might very well be her father. And if Kaylee was Luke's daughter, the rest of Tom's siblings could be Luke's as well. Tom could be Luke's kid himself. The math led them to the same places as me. So Sophie and Tom came up with a little plan. As it turns out, they are not in love. They never were. They're still just best friends. But they had the same instinct as me, that they didn't want to blow up our entire family and social unit without more direct evidence, which Tom has been working on acquiring. Even though Sophie badly wanted to tell me the truth, she was hesitant because she knew it would shatter me. She had no idea I was already suffering in silence. Sophie apologized for not voicing her suspicions sooner. Honestly, we both cried, and I made sure she understood that none of this was her fault, and that I loved her very much. So the bottom line is, Sophie and Tom already know they could be half-siblings and aren't actually interested in being a couple. That was their idea for how to rock the boat. To force Luke and Amy to do something about the situation rather than just keep making a fool out of me. I also think it was Tom and Sophie's way of punishing them for their affair. Teenagers can be vindictive. So they concocted this idea that they wanted to date. Every flirtation I've witnessed, every inappropriate touch, all staged apparently and for the benefit of Luke, Amy, or both. This was supposed to make them sweat, while they expected for Luke and Amy to jump out of their seats to forbid it from happening. When I was the one who did instead, that kind of threw the kids for a loop. They couldn't understand why I cared more than the actual cheaters. They began to suspect that maybe I knew. Tom confronting me that one time about, why can't I date Sophie, was him trying to gauge if I knew or not. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Sophie and Tom have always been close friends and confided in each other. Maybe I should be a little more concerned at how sneaky they've been, but honestly, I'm just so relieved they're not dating. Sure, they could be lying to throw off the scent, I guess, but they apparently already knew that they're likely related. They didn't blink at all when I told them. We even had a bit of a laugh together when Tom mentioned how he had been a little offended, that I was so against him dating my daughter before. I kind of jokingly asked him, "So you don't think she's gorgeous?" And Tom, bless his heart, shrugged it off. He said, "She is, but so is my English teacher, and I'm not asking her out either." Either way, the question now is, where to go from here? We have to figure that out. I will say that it is such a relief to have told Sophie, and I feel like an elephant has taken one of its feet off my chest. Having her in my corner and Tom in my corner as well means a lot to me. Even though I basically just got it absolutely confirmed that Luke is sleeping with Amy, I kind of already knew that anyway. So now it's just a question of how to proceed. Tom has already volunteered to submit his DNA so I can compare it to Luke's, and both he and Sophie advise me not to tell Luke and Amy when I do this, which I agree with. They're both completely on my side, which means more to me than I can ever express to them. Tom has also been trying to set up a camera in Amy's room to catch her and Luke in the act. Sophie told me flat out that I needed to divorce her dad, and hearing that from my own daughter made it clearer than it's ever been. She is right.
Okie dokie, gloves off and listen up. Tom and Sophie have to be sitting on the couch when Luke comes home and drop the bomb, that Sophie is pregnant. Or if this is too much, they can simply say that they had the same thoughts and did their own DNA tests and, oh, surprise, you are the father.
Actually, that was something they had considered doing before. Now that the three of us are on the same page, it's not the worst idea.
Was Tom home the night your husband stayed over to calm things down with Amy?
Yes, and according to him, he heard things too. That was a disgusting punch in the gut.
This was the part of the story that I never understood. Your husband was staying over at Amy's, but her kids live there too? Which, if it's real, I'm so sorry for you, OP. If it's not real, it's still incredible fiction. I don't see how he's visiting her bedroom at night without the kids seeing or hearing something. But you said your husband sleeps on the couch, or in his car, which means the house isn't that big. No spare bedroom. And so the kids would definitely be aware of where your husband was actually sleeping. Frankly, it makes a lot more sense that the son already knows, because how could he not have noticed anything? I'm so sorry, OP. I hope you get all the support you need to get out of this super shitty situation.
I very much wish it were fake, because the life I knew and loved is gone now.
I might be on the kids' side of manipulation, because I think the best bet would be for you to give Sophie and Tom your blessing, since Luke and Amy had reassured you so well, and see what they do.
We're considering that.
So Tom knew about the affair and even heard it happening? I'm glad you finally got the answers you needed. Just need to find out why he is having an affair and didn't just be with Amy instead. Why put you and your family through this? You need to find a good lawyer tomorrow. Interview a bunch of the best so he can't use them. He cheated on you, had a second family, then used your money to support said family. I'd take him for everything. Hopefully you live in an at-fault state and can sue for alienation of affection. Him leaving you the night of the argument was their goodbye bang fest. They know the jig is up.
Just have the two kids do the DNA. If they share a dad, they will pop as siblings. Why wait for Luke? All you need is to see if they are related now. Also, go to your mother-in-law, now.
Yeah, we're already doing that too. Oh, we're testing everyone. I'm doing one, Sophie's doing one. I'm going to swab Luke in his sleep. He already agreed anyway. And it's my petty way of taking back control. I'm going to my mother-in-law right now after replying to some of your comments.
I had a feeling when she was so over the top offended about your suspicions that they were accidentally giving you the answer. Anyone who was innocent would have at least told you something about the father of the kids. Add in that your husband stayed the night with her and Tom heard them. Wow. They are both seriously garbage human beings. I'm not sure how they thought this would be able to stay hidden forever. I'm also puzzled how they don't think this will negatively affect all the kids involved. Not one of those kids is going to be okay that, A, their dad didn't want to claim them as his kids and let them wonder who their dad was, while he was in their faces this whole time. Or B, their dad cheated on their mom literally their entire lives and had the audacity to do it in everyone's face. In your shoes, OP, this is what I would do. Do the DNA test in secret. When the results come back, show them to his parents before you talk to him or Amy. Let them in on what has happened, so that they know the unvarnished truth. Orchestrate a get-together with the two kids and you three adults. Casually tell Tom and Sophie that you've thought about it, and you've realized that you have been overthinking their relationship. That Tom is a great guy and you'd be honored to have him date your daughter. If you're feeling really vindictive, which given the magnitude of their deceit and betrayal would be understandable, Tom and Sophie should look at each other, and then Tom should say, they're so glad to hear you say that because they haven't known how to tell you guys that Sophie is pregnant. Then watch them scramble. Before they get too far, Tom can hand Luke the DNA results and ask Luke to explain why he has denied being his dad his whole life. Sophie can ask her dad how would he feel if his kids had, in fact, had intercourse and gotten pregnant because he was too selfish to say anything. Don't let them gaslight you or make you feel bad for anything. Don't accept any responsibility for their selfish actions. Tell them how disgusting it is that they not only had a secret relationship for so long, but that they willingly deprived 4 kids of knowing who their dad is, or all 8 kids knowing who their siblings are. That is despicable, and they are scum. Then have your in-laws come in from whatever room they were waiting in to tell Luke and Amy that they know everything, and that your mother-in-law has suspected for a long time. Let those two feel blindside after blindside and be so shocked and discombobulated that they aren't given enough time to get their stories straight. Take away their power to twist the narrative to his parents by preemptively bringing them the truth first.
Nice. That would be nice. OP, get the concrete proof of the affair, get that money and run. The disrespect is unreal and the sadness you feel is palpable. Damn, Luke and Amy, if there was any situation to go scorched earth and ruin both of them, this is it. Sending you strength and a good lawyer that works at a reasonable commission rate.
Very basically, that is my plan. But my lawyer has told me that full custody would be a reach, and as much as I'd rather just never see either of them again at this point. My kids still have close friendships and shared blood with Amy's kids. Some kind of coexistence with limited contact will be necessary, even after our marriage is dissolved.
This update is encouraging, as you've made significant progress, but it's disappointing to have Luke and Amy's betrayal confirmed. Curious if Tom clarified if Luke actually sleeps on the couch when he stays over at Amy's.
I asked, and he said yes, he does. However, many times Tom has gone to bed while Luke was on the couch, and later gotten up in the middle of the night and found that Luke wasn't there anymore, and wasn't in his car either.
He actually went out and checked the car for him.
A couple of times, yeah. Another point to confront them with.
Let's freaking go. I'm so happy for you, OP. How does it feel to be validated? I'm glad that you connected with Sophie and Tom and shared the same suspicions, now allies in this situation. You should be very proud of Sophie. She's awesome and smart. You raised her right. I'm so glad that she supports you divorcing Luke, her dad. I screamed when I read halfway through and I had to race home to read the rest. You are so much more closer to getting definitive proof with the DNA tests. At this point, it's very clear that Amy and Luke are together and Tom and his siblings are Luke's kids. Luke is officially a scumbag. Him and Amy are disgusting. Even though Tom and Sophie were acting like they were interested in each other to provoke a response from Luke and Amy, they allowed it. They did not give a crap about potential incest. Please tell your lawyer that those cheaters put the well-being and safety of their kids on the line to keep their affair hidden, risking incest, which they would have allowed for a crime to take place. You need to get full custody. Luke can't be trusted with children. Luke clearly has poor judgment and is not fit to be a safe and responsible parent. He had several years and opportunities to come clean, but chose not to. You brought up your suspicions multiple times, and when you confronted them, they played in your face. I know this is a big revelation. You are still processing this while pretending things haven't changed. Please get individual therapy and start to gray rock Luke. He doesn't deserve any more tears or love. The only consolation was that he gave you 4 beautiful children, and that's it. He was a horrible husband since the beginning and for however long before they started their affair. Everything he has done and said has been a lie. He was never the man you thought he was. I'm proud of you, OP. Your strength and courage is inspiring. Ignore the criticism and childish comments. You did not give consent to be in this situation. You did the best you could at the time. You are only guilty of loving and trusting a man you thought was loyal to you. I know you will find a man that truly values you.
It feels strange and surreal, but also good. I am so proud of my daughter. Luke is absolutely disgusting. I'm trying to emotionally divorce myself from him as I move through the process of actual divorce and let go of any residual desire to reconcile because I now know it's not going to happen. I know some commenters have been frustrated with my naivete and restraint, but it's been hard for me. Even so, my daughter telling me point blank to leave her dad was an eye-opener. I am a slow learner, it seems, but I have learned my lesson. My lawyer is up to date on everything. She thinks we're going to have a strong case, but has also warned me against secret DNA tests. She basically told me in so many words that Sophie and Tom would need to do that on their own, without my aiding and abetting them. So we're going to figure that out. Full custody is my goal, but according to my lawyer, it's not realistic, when all Luke has done is have an affair. He's never hurt our children, not in the conventional way. Though it pains me to say so, he was a very good father to all of them, apart from the business with Amy. My lawyer does think that primary custody is likely, though, as I make more money, plus the sexism bias. Mothers usually do get custody more often, even now, which isn't fair, but for me it is a good thing. Therapy is a very good idea, and among other things, I'll be looking into that for myself and for Sophie. You are very kind Reddit commenter. Thank you. First, a few points to answer from the comments. I don't have any DNA test results back yet. That can take weeks. But now that I know Sophie is in no danger of dating a relative, the pressure is off. I'll get into this momentarily, but it frankly no longer matters if Luke fathered the children. Some think my father-in-law defends Amy because he's also betting her. I highly, highly doubt my father-in-law is having an affair with Amy. At worst, he might know, or even just suspect, the truth about Amy and Luke. But it's also possible that he just refuses to believe they would do such a thing. I've been vague about details for privacy, but to put it very simply, Jim and Amy are both pretty white. Kat and Luke are not. Had Jim fathered Amy's babies, they would look different than they do. Nevertheless, I do have an update. While a stream of comments have called me spineless and naive, called me a sister wife, as an ex-Mormon, that hits a particular nerve, and most recently, a stream of comments have said my story is fake. Fair enough, it's the internet, but Luke is not the first scumbag husband to have 2 families. Several other comments have been incredibly kind and supportive, and I really appreciate that. Apologies if I haven't responded to a comment or direct message that you sent. I covered as many as I could, but I was literally getting hundreds, so I definitely missed several of them. First things first, I discussed this in the comments, but our little team has supposedly recruited my mother-in-law. I say supposedly because Sophie and Tom were going to talk to her about getting help with submitting the DNA test, and at the advice of my lawyer, I am staying out of the process. Officially, I told Sophie not to do it, and she said she wouldn't. Mother-in-law hasn't contacted me about it either, though we have been in touch. I'll get into that more in a moment. The bottom line is that I can honestly say I had no knowledge of any DNA test. Loophole City. Another bit of good news. I was digging through the paperwork in preparation for my divorce, wanting to get a head start against Luke. And one thing that came to my attention is that my name is on the paperwork for our home. Luke's name is not. I was the one who bought the house, and we always planned to add Luke onto the paperwork at some point, but we never got around to it, and eventually the idea or formality was forgotten. It was my lawyer, Paige, who pointed this out to me, and it was like finding a winning lottery ticket on the ground. I don't know where I'd be without Paige. She's a dear friend from college who I reached out to, hat in hand, for help. She's been there for me this past week, not just as legal counsel, but as a friend I really needed right now. The thing is, she's not our lawyer, me and Luke's. We have our own family attorney who has helped us out of jams in the past. We clashed with our HOA a few years ago, not worth getting into right now. But Paige is a lawyer who specializes in family law and has handled divorces before. Luke remembers her from college and knows she went into law, but doesn't know she's a divorce attorney. So I can have her over for coffee like we're catching up as friends, and he has no idea anything is going on. Turns out he's not the only one who can harbor someone under his spouse's nose, under the guise of being a friend. So, on to the update. The last time I looked in Luke's phone was 3 months ago, around the point Sophie and Tom began to go around claiming they wanted to date. I found nothing. While I know how to search for recently deleted photos and didn't see any, my comments taught me how to find recently deleted messages. So when Luke was asleep, I did just that. Swiped his phone and brought it downstairs, checked recently deleted. I am glad I did, but I also wish I had not, because I'm still reeling from the pain. Sure enough, a conversation with Amy had been deleted. Recent texts talking about the conflict between her and me, with Amy describing me as a problem and Luke trying to pacify her, without defending me at all, to be clear. They both alluded to how they had expected this for a while and just hoped it would never happen. Presumably me accusing them of having an affair. While the whole conversation and the fact that it was deleted was sketchy, nothing was actually admitted. So I scrolled a bit higher to a few days before the fight. Amy's messages got a bit more flirty. Then I saw it. 5 days before I confronted them, Amy had sent Luke a topless picture, a selfie with no shirt or bra. Guys, I teared up. I knew it was true. I knew it in my bones, but seeing the proof still cut me like a hot knife. Doesn't help that Amy's always had bigger breasts than me. I exited the Messages app and checked Luke's recently deleted photos. Sure enough, the same selfie was there, and others. Amy topless, Amy naked, in various poses to show off. There were pictures of the two of them together, cuddled and pressed close like a couple. In some of these, she was naked. In some, they both were. There were videos, too. Amy sent Luke a video message of herself topless, and I had to actually hear her voice talking to him in a tone that made me sick about how she was sending him a quick video to help him get through the day. In more than one video, she called him her boo, and hearing her call him that, I almost vomited. Stopped looking at that point. I'd seen enough. For about 5 minutes anyway. Then a strange compulsion to keep searching led me to check Luke's laptop. I knew enough of his passcodes to access his iCloud storage and, yeah, basically more of the same. There were letters, long letters between them. I didn't have the heart to read past the first few lines of one of them, but I did read Luke mention our children. There were countless selfies of Amy in revealing lingerie, selfies of them together, videos where Amy appeared to be alone. There were sex tapes of the two of them. Tom had previously offered to try and hide a camera in Amy's room, but fuck, he never needed to. Luke was hiding a whole treasure trove under my nose all along. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. There were so many, going back years. Not all of it was even sexual. There were some photos of Amy's kids, too. One video was of Kaylee and the twins playing together when they were younger, and Luke and Amy's voices from behind the camera. There were even old pictures of Luke and Amy from when they were younger. I'd even say teenagers. I snapped. All these years, I had been telling myself I had to be wrong, that it couldn't be true. Well, it was true. I know that no one forced me to look at as much of the evidence as I did, but I'm still hurting very badly from having seen it, and in that moment, I wanted to act. So I did. I called my lawyer, Paige. It was the middle of the night, so I had to call her twice, and she picked up. Though I had woken her when I asked her to come by and said it was an emergency, she agreed. I also asked her to draw up the paperwork and have it ready. She told me that she'd already had it ready since I first reached out to her. As I waited for her, I went through the necessary channels on Luke's laptop to make sure he wouldn't be able to remotely disconnect our access to his little stash, changing passwords and all that. Paige arrived, and I went outside to greet her in the car. Spent a good half hour in the passenger seat just crying, and she was great about that, before I passed her Luke's phone and his laptop with all the information she needed to use against them. She warned me that this could be considered theft. So I asked her to forward and print out copies of everything she could and then bring the items back, because I just couldn't bear to do it myself. She agreed. I went back inside, and then I packed up Luke's things while the house slept. At one point, Owen got up to use the bathroom and asked me what I was doing, but I told him I was just cleaning. Luke stirred once or twice while I was in the bedroom, but did not wake. I got all of his things packed into trash bags and I loaded up the car. That's when I woke him up and told him to come outside. He was confused and half asleep, but he did notice things were missing. I ignored his questions and just told him to come with me, so he followed me outside. Once we were by the car, I pulled out the divorce papers and officially handed them to him. That was about when he figured out what I was doing, and he tried to talk me out of it. Tried to be sweet with me, to be tender. He kept insisting that he loved me and that there had never been anything with Amy. Kept trying to persuade me not to tear our family apart. Even 2 weeks ago, I might have wilted under him because the manipulation and gaslighting were truly masterclass, but I can see through it now. I didn't tell him that I knew he was full of shit. I didn't tell him what I had seen. I just told him we were finished. He tried a different approach. He refused to go. stated firmly that our children were his too, and that even if we were separating, I had no right to just decide the kids would stay with me, over him. This was where I very coldly presented the paperwork, reminding him that the house is in my name, and told him under no circumstances would my kids be staying with Amy. He argued a while longer, but in the end, he decided to be the bigger person and keep the peace. At that moment, I didn't care where he went. Before he left, he did ask about his phone and laptop, and I waved him off by saying they were in one of the bags. Bought a little time. I couldn't sleep for the rest of that night. I cried more. Eventually, I realized I'd have to wake my children up early and explain to the extent that I could. Naturally, I woke Sophie first. I told her that I had kicked her father out and that I had discovered evidence of an affair on his devices. I did not specify what kind of evidence, and she did not ask. I woke up the others and gently told them that their dad had gone to stay somewhere else for a while, that I wasn't sure where, but from now on, things were going to be different. Louise was the one to ask if we were getting divorced, and I couldn't lie to her. I told her yes. Owen asked when they could see their father again, and I wanted to cry. Sophie was a very big help, urging her siblings to be sympathetic to me right now and worry about Dad later. I knew better than to poison them against their father. Paige warned me against doing that as well, so I only told Sophie that the affair was confirmed since she had already been in the know. However, as the kids were getting ready for school, Owen approached me and asked me point blank if it was about Amy. If Luke was going to be with her instead of me. I couldn't answer, but I suppose that's an answer on its own. Got the kids to school, and my next step was calling to have the locks changed. I knew Luke would be back for his devices before long, but thankfully Paige returned with them before he showed up again. It was a very quick visit. She just told me that all was accomplished, and she had records of everything we would need in court. Sure enough, Luke turned up an hour later, demanding to know where his laptop and phone were. I had set them back in our bedroom like they had never moved, and I just told him he had forgotten them. He insisted that I had said they were in one of the bags, so I just shrugged him off and told him I must have been mistaken. After he grabbed them, he tried again to reason with me, but I just showed him the door. I knew the kids would start to come home from school before long, and I think he was trying to delay leaving so he could see them. I was not having it. I started shouting again and sent him on his way. I'm still just in absolute pain and despair for what I saw. I don't know if he'll realize that anyone went through his devices and made copies of the evidence, or if he suspects I saw anything, but he obviously didn't say so. After he left, I cried once again, talked to my mother-in-law that night. Apparently, Luke did show up to his parents' house, which was a surprise, as I was so certain he'd stay with Amy. But maybe even he knows how suspicious that would look to the children and doesn't want to rock the boat as much. Maybe he knows I'm more likely to let my children see their grandmother than Amy at this point, and he wants to see them, to give his version of events. That is not happening. Kat already shared his version with me, that he relayed to her and Jim, that I'm having some kind of mental breakdown, that he wishes he could help me, but my paranoia is causing me to lash out and turn violent. I was never violent. I shoved him away when he tried to hold me, that is all. And what's so hilarious is that he didn't mention Amy at all to his parents. He didn't even frame it as me falsely believing he was having an affair. Even though that's his story when talking to me, he left Amy out of it when talking to his parents. Kat noticed that. Oh, she really noticed that. She believes me. Jim doesn't know what to believe anymore. According to Kat, he seemed very, very troubled by what he heard from all sides. As for Amy, she's radio silent. Tom has told Sophie that she's acting like nothing is wrong, but is clearly stressed out. That when her children ask, she makes the same sort of claims. that I am having some kind of emotional, nervous breakdown and pushing her away, as well as Luke. She doesn't mention anything about my accusing them of an affair, but still puts it all on me. Amy has not reached out to talk to me directly, and I have not tried talking to her since our big argument. I haven't really told my kids anything, just that I'm having disagreements with Luke and Amy, though I was very clear that it is not a question of my mental health. Honestly, I think they all kind of know what's going on. Sophie continues to be my rock as I try to be for her and the others. Tom continues to be our spy in the ranks. Right now, my biggest regret is the stress that all of this is causing on the children, which I knew it would, but it still needed to be done. My life has fallen apart, but it was never my life.
Wow. Owen asking if it was about Amy. All of your kids must have seen and heard things from them when they thought they weren't being observed. Please get them into counseling soon. You are amazing. Stay strong and calm. That will negate all claims of you having a mental breakdown. You've got this.
All the people who talked about keeping the kids together were off their rockers. Her 12-year-old knew there was something wrong, and they have been constantly thrown into a situation that was uncomfortable for them. OP has to start putting her kids first.
If this is fiction, nicely done. If this is real, you got this.
This is how I feel. There's so much effort put into the story, even if it was made up by her or AI. I'm all in. But I know AI isn't this far, though. It doesn't create something insane like this. It always adds in unnecessary details and overloads the exposition with too much emotional insight instead of just moving the plot. Truth really is stranger than fiction.
Oh, OP. I think I was secretly holding out hope that this would all turn out okay. Life is not a fairy tale. It was a very brave thing you did, going through his devices and facing this truth. Kind of like breaking your own heart, you knew what you would find. I'm so proud of you. I can't imagine the strength it took to quietly pack his things while he slept peacefully in bed. Sounds like Luke is a master manipulator. The most recent convo with Amy even talked about knowing this would happen. He had a cover story to explain being kicked out locked and loaded. Curious to see how he can spin this into your fault once the truth comes out. I would talk with your attorney about putting in a stipulation in your divorce decree for Amy not to be allowed around your children, or under the same roof during his custody times. Amy is a vile, disgusting woman, and that's a hill I would be willing to die on. You can't do anything about Luke being around your children, but you can put any kind of stipulation like this built into your divorce decree. Seems you have done everything you could at this point. No matter how difficult it has been, you faced the truth, and now you'll be able to live the rest of your life without a nagging thought at the back of your mind, constantly. Don't stop updating.
Life is not a fairy tale indeed. You're right, the nagging worry is at least gone. In a way, I think not finding anything would have been worse, because it would have perpetuated the ambiguity. After talking to Tom, I was all but certain, but it was still possible to be a misunderstanding, that it wasn't true. Now I know for sure. And I hate knowing, but at least the question isn't hanging over me anymore. It's tricky because them not being allowed to see Amy is going to impact their ability to see their best friends and half-siblings. If being my husband's affair partner was all it took for me to demand she not be allowed to see the kids, I feel like a lot of divorces would have clauses like that, but I never hear about it. I don't want Amy seeing my kids, but I'm not sure how realistic that is.
I honestly don't understand why Luke and Amy went through all this trouble. No one was stopping them from being together at the beginning. Why do all this? They're literally psychotic. They're gonna start painting you as a crazy person to your circle and on social media, soon. Do you think you can get ahead of the curve and tell people the truth? Without including the photos or videos, but screenshots maybe. Of course, only if your lawyer approves. Or at least once the divorce proceedings have started, and Luke and Amy know just how much evidence you have. If not, they're gonna spin the story as you went crazy and divorced Luke, and they looked for each other for support and fell in love. I know you think no one will believe that story, but it's important your narrative gets out.
I really hope this is fake. Poor woman. As someone who went through something similar, this is really close to how I split up with my former spouse 5 years ago. I don't know if it's real or fiction, but it's not like things like this don't happen. What I'll never understand about people like that is, why? Why not just be with that person instead of dragging other people into your mess?
Royal A.I.
In my last post, there were a number of criticisms toward Paige, my lawyer friend. You guys will like this update, as it turns out, you weren't the only ones who had a problem with her. As far as the deed being in my name, it's not an absolute hook, line and sinker. Paige is convinced that between that and me having been the one paying the mortgage, I stand a very good chance. It could be interpreted as a common marital property, but I'm going for primary custody with supervised visits anyway. Oh yeah, I'm playing hardball. People also questioned whether I should still be posting these on Reddit. But so long as it's all anonymous, I am in the clear. Doesn't even matter if someone who knows me could figure out I posted this. I didn't use any real names or reveal my location or anything like that. As for the laptop, even Paige admitted that was questionable, but technically I gave permission and she was only doing what I could have easily done on my own. I just really didn't want to go through all of that content. As far as the divorce papers, Paige had them filled out after the very first time I contacted her. My serving them to Luke was ceremonial. She still contacted him later to officially serve him and request his lawyer's details. But before he could respond, I had already done something. A little sneaky, perhaps. I reached out to our family attorney, the one who has always been on call to represent me and Luke during our marriage. He helped us out of a jam with the HOA a while back. I'll call him Zach. Now, contrary to some of the comments' suggestions, I cannot just go around town consulting with every lawyer in the area, with the explicit purpose of locking my husband out of hiring them. That is bad faith, and judges don't look too kindly on it. However, this was Zach. He had been my attorney and Luke's for years. I feel like I had just as much right to him as Luke did. So I got there first. So I was able to nail down our family's lawyer, met with both him and Paige. And boy howdy, they do not like each other. Zach brought up some of the same problems as some of you commenters. He argued that Paige's activity was in the gray area and urged me to hire him to represent me in the divorce instead. That caused a bit of conflict, as Paige is explicitly a family attorney, and this is her specialization. So I'm going to be consulting both of them from here on out. Zach actually thinks it's a good thing that I made these posts, as they can't really do much other than prove my sanity when Luke and Amy try to argue otherwise. Overall, I am doing better. I've been talking to a friend in real life, the mom of one of Sophie's friends. I also have therapy scheduled for myself, and I intend to look into family therapy as well. When my kids ask me what's going on, I simply tell them that their father and I are having adult problems, and it's nothing they need to worry about. That worked for about a day. Sophie warned me they were planning to confront me as a group, and they did, asking if Dad had cheated on me with Amy. Obviously, they've been talking about this, and perhaps they have been for longer than I had anticipated. Perhaps they've been wondering. Again, even though I had absolute proof, I was hesitant to tell them as much, and let me explain why. I naturally wouldn't tell them about the adult content I found. I would simply say that I found messages between Luke and Amy revealing their affair. But with the exception of Sophie, they weren't satisfied with that. I already know Carter, curious little sweetheart that he is, would want to see these messages. So instead, when I was asked directly by my kids if their dad had cheated on me, I simply said, I believe he did, yes. With as much sincerity as I could muster. I think they believe me. Tom and Sophie are texting nonstop, and from what I can gather, there's doubt among Amy's children as well. That this is about me losing my mind, and not about their mother being too close to my husband. I think it's slowly sinking in for poor Jim that what he didn't want to believe was possible is very much possible, and it's happening. I haven't shown him or Kat any letters or anything. They're hosting Luke, so I haven't had much of any contact with them at all. But I did have one phone call with Kat where we wished each other well. That was nice. In the background, I could hear shouting, and though Kat quickly went outside, I did hear what sounded like Jim shouting at Luke. He doesn't usually shout. He's the calmest man I've ever met. So in a way, I'm worried about Jim, but also relieved that the wool is being pulled off of his eyes. According to Kat, Luke is still staunchly denying everything. He was pretty upset when he found out that I had poached Zach, though, which gave me a kind of grim satisfaction. The test results came back. Sophie and Tom tested their DNA against each other to see if they truly are blood siblings. Here's a surprise. According to the test, they're not. They don't share any DNA. To everyone who believed Jim had fathered Amy's babies, here is definitive proof that he did not, because the test would have revealed that too. But I never believed it anyway. Sophie has her doubts and wonders if the results weren't faulty, and if we shouldn't take another test to be absolutely certain. But I'm not really worried about that. More confused than anything. I was so certain Tom had to be Luke's son. He was too. Now he doesn't know what to think, and I don't either. I obviously now know the affair happened and lasted years, and I know from the letters that Kaylee is Luke's child, or at least both he and Amy seem to believe she is, which confirms they were intimate 15 years ago. Now I'm just wondering for Tom's sake. Who, if not Luke, is his real father? He does kind of look like Luke, but that might just be coincidence. In general, everything was quiet for a few days until it wasn't, until she finally showed her face, my best friend, Amy. I am so happy I installed Ring cameras everywhere, as you are about to understand. Sure enough, Amy turned up on my doorstep and asked to talk. She had a relaxed demeanor and did not raise her voice. Assuming she was approaching me on Luke's behalf, I told her that I wasn't interested in talking to her and to just go away. She did not leave, but she didn't make a scene either. She persisted in telling me we needed to have a conversation. The kids weren't home and did have cameras inside. I was also recording her on my phone and being discreet about it, so eventually I relented and let her in. I don't know if she realized she was on camera. We sat down on the couch, and she instantly got into the reason for her visit. Turns out she and Luke know, or suspect, that I procured damning material from his laptop. Amy accused me of going through his devices and told me that anything I found was not my business, and I needed to delete it. That was all she had to say. No apology, no admission of guilt, didn't take responsibility for her own behavior. Hell, she might have known I was recording her, because she didn't even directly acknowledge what the sensitive material on Luke's laptop actually was. So I confronted her, letting out some of my anger. I asked how she could have the nerve to make demands of me. I asked her why she and Luke would do a thing like this in the first place. Why had they seen fit to spend all these years betraying me? I posed the question that I'd been wondering about for a long time, and as I expected, I got no answer. Literally, Amy didn't seem to hear me even as I confronted her. She seemed overly on edge, stressed out, panicked even, but she was trying to keep it under wraps. She ignored my questions and accusations and just kept telling me to delete whatever content from Luke's laptop that I had. She said that if I wanted to divorce Luke, That was my call, but not to drag her into it. Oh, drag your whore ass into it? Wow, that made me so mad. I kept my temper, but I did snap back that she was already very much in it. Amy just kept repeating herself, telling me to delete whatever I found. So I just refused. I asked her, point blank, why should I? Why did I have any reason to? Amy got more aggressive, raising her voice. She was trying to intimidate me, but I held my ground. She told me that this wasn't about me and that I needed to just do as she said, that it was very important. So I asked again, why? And yet again, she would not answer. So I asked her if Luke had sent her to do this, or if she had shown up on her own. No answer to that either. It was like talking to a brick wall. So I asked her to leave. Just as I'd been afraid of, she wouldn't go. She refused to leave until I had deleted everything I'd found. In front of her. I couldn't help laughing. I told her no. That wasn't going to happen. This is where I could see her starting to freak out more. She got up, ran into the other room, and grabbed my laptop. Before I could stop her, she smashed it on the floor. I really don't know why she thought that would work or get her the outcome she wanted. I think she was just panicking. Obviously, I still have everything, except now I need to buy a new laptop. And sadly, her doing this was out of frame of the camera, but it's fine. All of my important files are backed up, and at that moment, I was more concerned that Amy would do something else drastic. She looked like she was going to have a breakdown, like a psychosis. I tried again, very calmly, to tell her that she needed to leave or I would call the police. She refused again and just kept repeating her demand that I drop this whole cheating angle and divorce Luke, without trying to argue that an affair took place. At that point, I just stared at her. At the woman I had considered one of my dearest friends in all the world, and I told her that I didn't owe her anything, but she owed her children the truth. That they had the right to know where they came from, who Luke really was to them. Amy bristled and told me it was none of my business, that I didn't understand her family, and I needed to back off. She kept going back to this idea that I could divorce Luke, but I must not claim he'd had an affair with her. I just told her that I didn't need her permission to handle my divorce how I wanted, and told her again to leave. She got more and more desperate, and her anger accelerated to the point that she physically attacked me. I did not expect her to actually attack me. I'm not much of a fighter, but I do know the human body pretty well, and where it's weakest. She hurt me pretty badly, but I got her off me. That part was very much on camera, and the whole audio was recorded on my phone. She finally left after that, and I immediately called 911 to file a police report. I had the strangest feeling she'd try something similar, and wanted to beat her to the punch. I was able to clean myself up by the time I had to face my kids, and while I downplayed the story, I did not lie to them about why I had a black eye. I told them, for their own safety, to steer clear of Amy. I also sent the footage to Paige and Zach, as well as pictures of my injured state before I cleaned up. They've also printed out the letters that reference Kaylee as Luke's child. I really feel like Amy just screwed herself over on all this. I don't know what her motives were. Was she protecting Luke? Was this his idea? Does she just really not want the world to know she's a homewrecker? Is she covering her own ass? As if people didn't know already. The more of my social circle I talk to and inform of the basics, the more people are confessing that they had wondered in the past if Luke wasn't cheating on me, but didn't have any concrete proof. I suppose Amy doesn't want her kids to know who fathered them, which does line up, but I'm still not sure about Tom. I didn't ask Amy about him in particular. That's it till now. I don't know exactly why you guys are so eager for these updates, but I don't mind posting them. I've never blogged about my life before. I'd imagine it feels something like this.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall when Luke finds out that the children he thought were his actually belong to someone else, and that his mistress has been cheating on him for years. It would be so satisfying. He will lose not only his wife and mistress, but also some of his children. Not to mention losing the respect of the children he had with you. He's headed straight for the downfall.
I had not considered this new angle. How interesting. Another poster said they thought Amy might be so insistent that she be left out of everything, because the in-laws will cut her off. I still think that's a strong possibility, but even more so if the kids aren't actually Luke's.
I'm so sorry that she had gone to your home and attacked you, even giving you a black eye. Glad you still have the evidence and didn't back down. I have a feeling that she is wanting you to delete the stuff, because maybe your in-laws have threatened to cut her off financially. Thanks for the update. Hope you're healing.
I could see that being the case.
For whatever reason, the person who is the father cannot be known. Maybe it's someone in her family. Could it be her own father? Maybe she's blackmailing someone, but if this gets out, they can have revenge? All I know is, this is deeper than the affair. This is something she is willing to destroy everything over, because it has her locked. She was willing to attack you over it. Don't let this go. Bite down and find out. Would ask Paige to review for hints at something other than the affair. She is most concerned about the affair and her family finding out. I gotta go back and read the background, but is she in contact with them? Is there a possibility that they are giving her money and revealing this affair would take that away? The sensitive information is none of your business? Which makes me wonder. If she's not on drugs or in the middle of a psychotic break, why wouldn't the affair information have anything to do with you? Why is she fine with talking about the affair, but the actual details of the affair are too sensitive to even mention, as if she knows you're recording? But she has no hesitation in attacking you, even though she seems to know you're recording. I wish you the best and hope this doesn't continue to escalate. I am hoping for a quick and speedy divorce.
She's not in contact with her family, and hasn't been for many years. They abused her. Luke's family became her family. She never actually admitted to having an affair, actually. I noticed that too.
What DNA test did the kids use? That was super fast. Amy sounds like she has mental problems. No accountability for her actions. Zero remorse without empathy. She thinks she can't do any wrong. Sue her for the laptop and press charges for battery or assault.
Just one of the over-the-counter tests you can buy online. If it gets to the point of having tests done in court, those are likely to be more reliable. Oh, you read my mind, kind stranger. That's exactly what I want to do. Laptop is likely to just be small claims court, but it's another charge on the pile.
Hey, OP. I'm sorry for what you are going through. I know it hurts. I just hope you and your children can heal once you get rid of the cheater and the hoe. Want to note one thing I read in many comments. People wonder if the slug is in panic mode because she's afraid she could lose support, like money from the cheater's parents. And she would be left alone with her children. Well, that's her problem. Not your monkey, not your circus. You don't owe her anything. She betrayed you, she screwed your marriage and your family for years. If you can ruin her and soon-to-be ex-husband lives, do it. It's the payback you deserve. Once everything is sealed and done, talk to Tom and tell him that you're sorry for what's going on with his mother, that you don't blame him or his siblings for this, and that if he needs some kind of help in the future for him or his siblings, you could try.
You're right, it's not my responsibility. But honestly, I don't think it's even about money. It might be, but I feel like Jim and Kat would still support her for the sake of her, Luke's kids, if nothing else.
I still don't understand all the sleeping over. Can you explain why there was so much of it? I saw you respond that Luke slept over as often as one, or even twice per week. At the time, what was the reason for it all, especially if it didn't raise any concern for you? You both had children to raise. Would the children stay with you and Luke if you slept at Amy's house? Trying to understand the thought process at the time, before you got suspicious and started questioning things.
In hindsight, I feel very stupid for just accepting this as normal.
No judgment at all, but if you're trying to put all the puzzle pieces together, maybe looking deeper into the sleeping over issue. Did this start right from the beginning of your relationship? Whose idea was it? Was it a set night of the week? Random? Was it on nights you all got together for dinner and having kids play together? Did Amy initiate a, hey, you guys should come over tonight, and maybe alcohol was involved? And for safety reasons, you stayed. Or did Luke just say, hey, honey, it's my night to sleep at Amy's? And off he went. I think for your own healing process, understanding how you may have been manipulated into thinking this was normal behavior is important for how you'll form future relationships where you can trust friends or a partner. Good luck. Sounds like you've been in a fog induced by others, and you've broken through the fog. Keep moving forward and hoping you stick with therapy for yourself and the kids.
It was just sort of happening from the time that I met both of them. At first, I was concerned, but over time, I found enough proof that nothing was going on. I low-key surprise visited them a few times, and nothing was ever happening.
I wonder if they always had a thing for each other, or if their affair started after you and Luke married. Because if they always had a thing for each other, why didn't they just be together and not involve you at all? Could also be that Luke wanted to have his cake and eat it too, so he kept both of you around.
Based on the letters, a little of both. Their first intimacy happened before we met, but they were on and off until Tom was born. Then they were just indefinitely on. I'll get more into this when I update.
Just wondering, did any of Amy's kids ever called Luke Dad or anything like that? Bring him to Father's Day stuff at school or make him father-related gifts?
As far as I know, they never called him Dad. They have gotten him Father's Day cards as a kind of symbolic gesture. Hey guys, it's been a rough week. A lot has happened. I don't really want to talk about all of it in detail, so I'm going to keep this short. I know I never shut up. It's just how I am, but I'm going to be much more brief this go-around. Luke has a lawyer now. I don't know him, but I know he met with Zach and Paige. To everyone saying I should have Amy arrested, I probably could have if I had shown the police the video. Instead, I just sent it to my lawyer. Maybe this makes me foolish, but even now, I think part of me is still trying to protect people I once loved and go easy on them. Could also be because, well, everything's on hold for the past few days. Because Jim had a heart attack. He's gone. I saw Luke and I saw Amy and Amy's kids at the funeral. It was the first time we were all together since before all this happened. Nobody talked about what's going on, short of Amy briefly apologizing for what happened before. She did seem sincere, I'll give her that. But I wasn't about to call her out anyway, not then and there at least. Amy, Luke, and Kat all seemed pretty devastated. I was too. But we all agreed not to argue or talk about the divorce, and to just let the day be a ceasefire to focus on Jim. Luke and I had a good conversation about him. I've been spending time with my kids and taking a couple of days off work. I have enough of them on the back burner. Luke also saw the kids twice before and after the funeral, with me present. It went well. At my direction, and Sophie's, they didn't mention Amy, and Luke didn't try anything funny with any of them. I think he does miss them and hates that he can't see them, thanks to all this. The kids are also pretty upset about losing Grandpa, on top of not being able to see Dad as much as before. I don't think any of them blame me, but that's far from the point, frankly. Carter slept in my bed the last 3 nights. But whoever suggested that Kat lied about the test results, was correct. She never sent them in. She confessed as much to me. I guess she didn't feel comfortable going behind her son's back, but did feel comfortable lying to me to protect him until she didn't, until she felt guilty, and she came clean. Under the circumstances, I am not angry with her, but I know better than to trust her anymore. As far as I know, she did not tell Luke about the test, but it means Tom could still be Luke's son. Ugh, probably is. My lawyers finished going through Luke and Amy's letters with a finer tooth comb. The bottom line is, they definitely found what it was that Amy didn't want me to see, and I now completely understand why she was so panicked. It has to do with why Amy and Luke didn't marry conventionally. They did something very bad, but this is genuinely something that I'm not sure I should be talking about, even on an anonymous internet post. I haven't even been able to collect my feelings about what Amy and Luke have done, especially with everything else going on. So I don't know if I should be more explicit. I'm sorry, I know that's not what anyone wanted to hear, but please try to understand. Paige agreed with me that when in doubt, don't post it yet. I've told my lawyers to put a pin in it for now because I'm in no fit state to figure out how to proceed with it, or if I should use it against them. I'm just feeling like shit, honestly. It's difficult not to blame myself for what happened to Jim. I can only imagine Luke and Amy are blaming themselves too. I know they're bad people. I don't forgive them. But this tore them apart, as it did me, and I think all three of us feel like the divorce stressed Jim out to the point where it may have contributed. He already had heart disease, and in particular, I blame myself for showing him what I showed him. He was in such denial that I showed him proof of the affair shortly before he died. I'll be carrying that with me for a very long time, even if I shouldn't. I'll update again whenever I do. I'm sorry. I'll respond to comments as I can.
Sorry for your loss, OP, but you're for real. Gonna be brushing off whatever you found out about Luke and Amy? I'm struggling to think of bad things a couple can do to prevent a conventional marriage. I've seen some posts of people guessing they're half-siblings. That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe your mother-in-law and father-in-law knew too? Or maybe just the father-in-law knew about it? Well, would explain why mother-in-law didn't send in the DNA test. If her son wasn't the father, they'd still show up as related, just at a lower percentage. Also explains the financial help they provided. I hope you don't let them get away with painting you as having a mental breakdown, or worse. Accusations like that can affect custody. It's good that you have proof of the affair, but I hope you cover all your bases in this front. Let me be blunt by asking, the bad thing. Is it 10 years of jail bad? Or life sentence bad?
I have proof of more than that. At this point, I have everything I need to burn them down. I'm hoping for a peaceful surrender, but I'm prepared to destroy them if I have to. Only if I have to. I'd rather not put my kids through the war. But I'm not going to lose them. The thing, probably more like 10 years, if that. Jail time isn't what I'm worried about. The kids, though.
I understand you do not want to put your kids through such things, but do you think they would agree with you? If Sophie or Tom know about that, do you think they would agree not pressing charges? Also, this is your life that they destroyed. They lied to you for 20 years in the worst possible way, and they committed a crime, as you said. Do you think your kids and Amy's kids don't deserve justice? Because they destroyed 8 kids' lives along with yours. You may divorce your husband, but they can't divorce their parents. Luke will always be their father. If they learn one day that you did not go after them, do you think they will forgive you? This topic is very sensitive, and I think you should also think about how your kids will feel about this in the future. Depending on what Luke and Amy have done, my guess is incest, you are putting them in harm's way by not destroying them. Luke and Amy are clearly a toxic influence on your kids, and they can end up with even more trauma by you playing nice, and not protecting them as a mama bear should. Regardless of the reason, if you were to reveal whatever illegal thing it is that they did, what do you think would happen to Amy's kids? I assume there's no way you could care for all of them if Luke and Amy were put in jail. What a mess.
So the grandmother betrayed the request of her own granddaughter because she wants to be loyal to her son. I understand to an extent, but now I feel the granddaughter will never trust her grandmother after this.
She's in a terrible position. I don't envy her. But because of her position, she's compromised, and I cannot depend on her.
I thought Amy was his best friend. They grew up together, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You never really said that specifically, but at what age did Amy begin living with the family? I assume she moved in with them as a child and they grew up as siblings. Is that correct?
It was gradual, as far as I recall. She was staying with them most nights by 11, officially moved in by 15.
Thank you. Which makes me wonder. I bet Amy was Jim's child from his secret affair. Kat and Luke knew about it. That would explain Jim's relentless denial, his refusal to believe, and Kat's lie about the test, and Luke and Amy doing something bad, legally and morally. Who would believe that his son would have an affair with his half-sister, knowingly? Well, Jim wasn't about to leave his own daughter penniless and homeless. This explains years of financial support and Amy's rescue from her bad parents. OP's knowledge on this issue is limited, only this much has been explained. I'm sure the family was torn apart by the affair, and Amy's father disowned her. That would explain the abusive family story. Luke staying at Amy's a lot doesn't bother his parents, because she's his sister. And when he saw the proof of the affair, the poor man's heart could not take it. Oh boy, I'm sorry for your loss, OP. You're not to blame for any of this. But I'm sure you will get rid of this guilt through therapy. What you've been through is not easy to bear. It's normal to feel guilty. There is nothing more important than focusing on yourself and your children. I wish you and the children patience and strength.
Hey, OP, I just recently came across your thread. I want to start off by saying I am so sorry for the loss of your father-in-law and for all that you and your children are going through. Please be careful of both Luke and Amy. They are beyond selfish and don't seem to care who they hurt, including the children. I have one question though. In one of your earlier posts, you had stated that Amy was completely against the use of birth control. I am just baffled as to why, especially if everyone's theory is correct about Luke and Amy's real relationship. And they did, in fact, have prior knowledge. Before continuing on as they have done, trying their hardest to prevent children would have been in their best interest. I simply cannot fathom why they continue to have more and more children.
From what I can tell, it's connected to whatever she was exposed to as a child. This is something that still baffles me as well. I don't think it's entirely rational.
I'm sorry for your loss, OP. If you need to step back from these posts, please do. Please focus on your kids and your journey to finding contentment within your life. It's normal to feel sadness, anger, confusion, and so many other emotions. Take your time and remember those who you love and can lean on. Oh, FYI, there's a moment from the TV show The Good Place where one of the main characters describes death as a wave. The quote goes as follows: "Picture a wave in the ocean. You can see it, measure it, its height, the way the sunlight refracts when it passes through. And it's there, and you can see it. You know what it is. It's a wave. And then it crashes in the shore, and it's gone. But the water is still there. The wave was just a different way for the water to be for a little while." You know, it's one conception of death for Buddhists. The wave returns to the ocean, where it came from and where it's supposed to be. This quote has helped me in grieving processes, so perhaps it might help you. I wish you nothing but the best for you and your kids.
This is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
OP, you have shared more than enough with us. I am so sorry for everything that you, your family, and Amy's kids are going through and might have to deal with in the future. You do not have to continue with updates or replying to the comments. We know that there's proof of an affair, And more than likely, all of Amy's kids are Luke's. I think your most recent update speaks volumes, and I've noticed how you provided context without providing context, if that makes sense. I know a lot of people, heck, I was one of them, really wanted to see the grenade go off, and that Amy and Luke pay for what they did to you. But I completely understand wanting to protect certain individuals that will get ravaged in the blast. I think keeping that bomb in your arsenal and using it only if you need to is what's best. I would hope Amy and Luke are smart enough not to make you use it. Good luck, OP, and if this is where the story ends, I hope the next one is nothing but beautiful and you can get past this terrible saga.
To be honest, I've sort of been somewhat using these posts to vent emotion, like some people have talked about. Gotta love the anonymity of the internet. I shouldn't be doing that probably, though. That's what therapy is for. I still may update in the future, but it just depends. I also kind of felt obligated, even though I'm not, to the people who were very kind. I mean, a lot of people have guessed it anyway. I wasn't as vague as I was aiming to be. It seems. But yes, if and when I fire this gun, it's going to affect the lives of a lot of people, including innocent ones. Hey everyone, this may very well be my last update for a while. I'm in therapy now, as are my children. And from what I hear, Amy's children are as well. So that's good. So I should probably be focusing on healthier ways to expel my feelings. Nonetheless, I have talked to my therapist about these posts, and according to her, venting anonymously online can be healthy, up to a point. If I do talk about my life again, I may do it in different subreddits or something. I'm still not sure. I attended a meeting with my lawyers where the topic of my Reddit posts came up and what the judge thought about it. Many were worried about how these posts might come back to bite me in the ass, legally speaking. The short answer is that they won't. The long answer is that because they're anonymous, there's technically no risk of defamation or slander. I've changed enough of the meaningless details and given everyone fake names. The posts aren't going to be relevant in the case, and I'm clear to keep writing them if I so choose, so long as I don't discuss the details of the actual case itself. Though I think the judge would prefer I just stop writing these altogether, one of the reasons I may do so. Without divulging the specifics, I went ahead and reported what I had learned. And all hell broke loose. I knew I had to do so. They forced my hand. I had to. Because Amy and Luke had changed gears after Jim passed. They began to make the case that Luke and I had always had an open marriage. That there could be no such thing as an affair, and any instances of Luke sleeping with Amy could not be counted against him. It is no accident that they chose to do this after we lost Jim. As far as I can tell, he was the only other person who knew about what Luke and Amy did, and would have done something about it. Now that they don't have to worry about that, I think they wanted to claim I always knew about the affair, and that it was no true affair. When I didn't report them before they made these claims, they must have assumed I didn't know the truth. So they felt comfortable in sharing these lies, and simply changed their story. But here's the kicker. I knew. So, I reported it, and now, they're fucked. Which unfortunately means everyone else found out. There was no way the children wouldn't learn the truth through the grapevine. I told Sophie and Tom personally because I figured they would learn of it anyway. The others did. Tom was pretty shell-shocked. I know I'm just the messenger, but I felt terrible and I wanted to comfort him, but there wasn't a whole lot I could do. Poor Kaylee did not handle it well. I'm told she had several meltdowns and then tried to run away. I know she tried to run away because she came to our house for sanctuary. But she couldn't stay with us and hide, but she didn't want to go home to Amy. She stayed until they came to pick her up, and literally, I had to give her back. I knew all the reasons I had to, but I was sorely tempted to give the middle finger to all of them and let Kaylee stay with us against Amy's wishes. But no, I had to relinquish her, and honestly, nothing has been harder than that was. I know it isn't my fault, but I still feel like I betrayed her. Sophie's also been dealing with a lot of anger toward her father, especially after he and Amy forced Kaylee to come back to stay with Amy again. All of this. It hit Sophie and Kaylee the hardest. Luke wanted to see Sophie again, and she refused. She wouldn't come out of her room. Technically, I was supposed to let him see her, but she's 15 years old. I told her to come out of her room. She wouldn't. So in my book, I tried enough. This was after Kaylee's incident, so when Luke pressed me to force Sophie out of her room, I'm not proud to say I shouted at him to leave. My blood was boiling by that point. Throughout all this, my soon-to-be ex-husband and his affair partner are still acting like I'm the bad guy. Luke and Amy are angry with me, and that's putting it lightly. They have no right to be, but they are, or at least they're acting angry. I now have a restraining order against Amy because I was quite certain she would confront me after the fact, and she did. After I reported them and before Kaylee came over, Amy came to the house while my kids were home, banged on the door, and screamed her lungs out. She was furious with me for what I had done, but I don't know what she expected me to do. Seriously. I called the police, but Amy was gone by the time they showed up. It wasn't really helpful like last time, to be honest. When Kaylee came to me for asylum, Amy came after her, but I wouldn't let her in until she called the cops herself. I would only let one of them take Kaylee. Amy was not setting foot in my house. I was very clear to explain the situation, but it didn't matter. Amy later smeared me on social media and framed me as a kidnapper. I set the record straight without divulging too much about the circumstances of the situation, which I was tempted to do. Luke also gave me the lecture of a lifetime when I saw him, but I just kept cutting him off and spitting the facts in his face. I don't know if it's been my time away from him, but I'm learning to recognize his bullshit now. Where previously I fell for it every time, he always sounds so reasonable and sweet, but what he's actually saying is often circular and evasive. Honestly, I am so angry with him for what he's done to his children, to all of them, Kaylee especially. I want to adopt that girl. I know I can't, but I want to. Kat and I had a long talk as well. So far as I can tell, she didn't know, and she's genuinely sorry for her earlier deception. Trust takes time to rebuild, but I also understand that she was in an awful position. But now that certain things have come to light, she's kind of in shambles herself, so I pity her. Not to mention, if Amy loses custody of her children, and she very well might, I'll need all the help I can get. I can't take all of them in. I don't have the space. Kat will need to do some of the legwork, so I'm trying to give her the chance to earn my trust back, sort of out of necessity. I can't speak to the long term, but if all goes as it should, Luke's not even going to be getting visitation of my kids. We'll know soon enough, though, and it will be on record, if Amy's children were fathered by him. All I know is they've always been quite certain Kaylee was, though they never had her tested. So far as I can tell, Amy hasn't really been intimate with anyone other than Luke for a long time. For the record, Kat is still supporting Amy financially. And by that, I mean she's supporting Amy's kids. I don't mind that. If Amy loses custody, that all goes away anyway. As to the how and why of Luke and Amy getting together, from the letters, I've put the pieces together as best I could. Amy was subjected to specific trauma as a kid, if you know what I mean, and Luke was apparently the only person she felt safe exploring her curiosity with, physically wise, when they were in high school. It was a very bad idea, and they both knew the reason why it was a very bad idea, well before they made that choice. As to the lie about them being surrogate siblings, Apparently, they always did have that kind of relationship emotionally, but they also did this. After Tom was born, they also believed Tom to be theirs, going off the letters. The bond took on more romantic aspects as well. Amy describes Luke as my person, and he says the same about her. I did read the letters in more depth for as much as it sickened me. I wanted to understand. I'm doing better overall, though. Personally, I'm doing better. Which makes me feel kind of guilty because nobody else is. My kids are miserable, which makes me miserable. But I know there's light at the end of the tunnel and I want them to see it. Luke and Amy are miserable, which, honestly, I'm not going to say I'm glad about, but I don't know what they were expecting. They've been playing a monstrous game for decades. It was always going to have consequences sooner or later. Amy's kids are deeply miserable, especially Kaylee. I wish I could reach out to her again, but I absolutely can't except through Tom. And he needs to play this carefully. Kat is destroyed too. We're all still reeling from the loss of Jim. And honestly, the Kaylee incident really tore my heart in half. But I think I'm over the hump and am taking comfort in how I'm actually choosing myself for a change.
When you say report, did you call the cops or just tell everyone in your circle that you weren't in an open marriage and that they are siblings? Is Luke still with his mom, or are him and Amy just shacking up at this point?
I went through legal channels, not social. As of now, he's staying with Amy, but I don't believe it's going well. Her children aren't happy with him or with her.
For those kids, this cannot get out to their peers, or it is the end of any normal shot at a normal childhood. Luke should not be staying there at all. Basically, screams the Game of Thrones. Do you think Amy keeps showing up because Luke is trying to gain your forgiveness? She probably thought she finally got her man. How did people react to her social announcements about the open marriage and Luke being her baby daddy?
She only made posts accusing me of kidnapping Kaylee and lying about her and Luke, which caused a lot of commotion even after I cleared the air. Most people seemed to believe me or believe that it was a misunderstanding. As far as her claims of an open marriage, that was only the statement from Luke's lawyer. It's not widespread. At least not that I've seen. Neither of them have confirmed the paternity of Amy's children. She's maintaining that they aren't Luke's, and even if they were, that's between the two of them and no one else. DNA tests will sort that out. They'll sort everything out. As to my reporting, she and Luke are maintaining that they don't know anything about what I accused them of. But I have proof that they did know.
Wow. So she alluded to the incest in her post by saying you're lying about a bet-provable thing? She's going to be in for a huge shock. Honestly, this seems like a possible self-deletion situation developing. All of the kids will be massively damaged from this, but Amy's kids will be disgusted, embarrassed, and humiliated. Amy and Luke are awful people. I hope karma hits them as hard as it should, considering all of the lives they've effed with. I know Amy doesn't work, but is this affecting Luke's employment at all? You say Kat is supporting Amy. Where is Luke's money going?
They both work, and so far as I know, it hasn't affected their employment.
So they are both still under the impression you didn't see anything on the laptop she broke? And assuming you are the one making assumptions on their relations?
They do know what I found. Everything is out in the open.
OP, how did you discover that Luke and Amy are half-siblings? Was it mentioned by Luke and Amy in their messages to each other?
They discussed it in their letters to each other. Also, clearly in one of their adult tapes. Apparently.
Them mentioning it in one of the tapes is diabolically disgusting. I'm sorry, truly sorry for the pain and stress this is causing you and those you love. As an outsider who could never truly understand your turmoil or the grief that has been inflicted, wish all the best for you, Kat, and all the children. I am a bit curious as to why Child Protective Services hasn't been involved thus far for Amy's children, as psychological trauma can be used to enforce separation while this is all sorted out. I realize it doesn't always seem the best solution, but letting her children see the continuation of them living together cannot be healthy for their mental well-being. Maybe this could be a catalyst for them staying with Kat. While this goes through the court system, I feel certain it would give the children, Kat and you, a little more peace of mind in the interim.
It may yet come to that. It's all fresh at this point.
It's obvious why it's not going well. Their children are all old enough to understand their father hid them away because their existence is actually a crime, legally and morally wrong. He pretended to step into the role of father when in reality, he was their father all along. He missed their childhood. He may have spent the night weekly, but that's not a father. He never claimed them ever. That's messed up. He wasn't proud to be their father, because he was also their creepy uncle. They need to watch Kaylee. She might try to unalive herself. Someone in this mess is going to try. I suspect her or Amy. Luke values himself too much. If he didn't have Mommy's money, he'd be screwed royally. Instead of screwing his sister, he'd actually have to be a man and get a real job. I know he has that medical condition that basically makes him a vampire, but there are night jobs. He's been spoiled for too long. He needs to be knocked down to reality. Same with Amy. She's a grown woman with 4 children and lives off of her daddy's money. How shameful. Kat needs to grow a spine and tell them straight up she'll take the kids, and those two piss off and stop giving them money.
That crossed my mind as well. Tom is keeping an eye on her for the time being.
I wondered if Jim's passing would embolden Luke and Amy. Well, at least now we know why they weren't super alarmed at the possibility of Tom and Sophie hooking up. So, sorry for all of your losses. I hope the kids can recover in time.
I've been following this since the first post, but I think I may have missed something. What actually happened? Why couldn't Amy and Luke just be together and be a normal couple?
OP didn't say it herself, but it was guessed that Amy and Luke were half-siblings, or somehow related to each other. Based on the other posts and OP's comments on them, there is a strong possibility that Amy is Jim's affair child. That would explain why he was so adamant on helping a non-family member, in the way only a parent would. Kat obviously suspects the same thing, which is why she didn't actually send the DNA tests in. She suspects but doesn't know for certain, and if the results come back that the kids are related, she has damning proof that her marriage was built on a lie.
That makes sense. Jim could not believe that his 2 children would sleep together. Denial, denial, denial. Now we all wait for the true update once the case is over. I think everyone just wants to know if they are half-siblings at this point, but we may never know, and that's fine too. Legally, I'm not supposed to answer that question, but I am very aware that many people are asking it. Don't worry.
You doing better is the light at the end of the tunnel. Understandably, the kids are having a rough time, but when they're ready to start healing, you'll be ready to help them through it. You're so incredibly strong, OP. Also, have you considered writing letters to Kaylee and keeping them for a time, when it's safe to give them to her? I'm sure she must be so lonely and confused through this. Maybe having those letters ready for her when the time comes will also serve as a light at the end of the tunnel. For both of you.
A very good idea. Thank you.
Don't forget that adult adoptions are a thing. You may be able to adopt Kaylee one day, and you may get your chance to tell her that. Even the expression of love might help her, since she's lost so many people at once here. Luke must have been unbelievably frustrated to not be able to pull the wool over your eyes anymore. How funny to think of.
Thank you. You are absolutely right.
I will forever ask myself why bring an innocent party into their spider web. They are gross, vile human beings. All of this could have been avoided if he never bothered you to begin with. I'm happy you're doing better.
They figured one of them should find a stable, long-term relationship, but Amy didn't want to be the one to do it. I suspect they chose me because they expected me to make money in the future, as they could tell straight away I was gullible. Or maybe Luke's claims that he loves me have at least some kernel of truth to them. Don't know, don't care. This isn't love.
Did they write that out in the letters? Or even mention using you financially or as a cover? That alone could help your case tremendously. Did he ever speak about you to Amy in the letters or texts? I'm just curious on how far their evilness went. Did he ever say he loved you to Amy? It's just so strange she was able to maintain a facade of being your friend for literally 20 years. She was obviously jealous of you. That came out the moment you confronted them directly. Truthfully, I hope the entire community and friend group turns their backs on them. I hope they're blacklisted. It's actually better in a way that they are related, because a regular affair wouldn't garnish this much disgust. Some people would even believe their lies of an open marriage, or somehow blame you for turning a blind eye to everything. And he basically would have been able to make Amy and her kids his primary family, and your kids would have become second. Now, that's not possible. The hurt, shame, and anger of their children will be their biggest punishment. Tom and Kaylee will never have a normal relationship with either parent. In fact, they are going to choose you. The twins are going to struggle as well. Luke and Amy need to move far, far away. Maybe to Alabama? They never really cared about the children's well-being. They lived off their parents and your money while they had their perverse fun. Kat needs to cut off their money and take the children in. She needs to let go of her son and her husband's affair product. Let Luke and Amy go live in a dilapidated shack in the woods somewhere.
Their references to me in the letters were entirely robotic. I was there, I existed, and they maneuvered around me. Judging by the letters, I found no contempt toward me, but I didn't see much love either. Luke didn't express love, but neither did Amy express jealousy.
You seem to be handling this nightmare with a level head, and I'm glad for all the kids that they have you. Even if Amy's kids can't lean on you right now, and I know it hurts to not be able to comfort them right now, they still have you in the long run. And if the youngest ones don't realize it yet, I'm sure Tom would be able to reassure them that they have you in their corner. I know it's a lost cause and everything is still fresh, but do you have any happy memories with Luke? Did you ever feel loved? Did you think he did love you, or was it all false?
Oh, loads. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. I certainly felt loved during those times. I have no idea how much of it was real to him.
Does Luke even care that his marriage with you is over? Did he try to salvage it? Though I'm not sure why he even started with you while having a whole love life with Amy. It's worked so well that they started having kids when he started having kids with you. Did he get off on it? I still believe without doubt. Kat knew all along.
Initially, he did. He tried very hard, but I ignored all of his messages. But I believe he's since realized our marriage is damaged beyond repair, that I'm not coming around, and so he's switched all of his attention to Amy. So far as I can tell, Kat was clueless.
I feel like I missed something. Did we find out if Amy was Jim's affair child for sure? And with whom? How are Luke and Amy related by blood? Sorry, I just can't remember. And it gets a little tough coming in late in the updates.
Amy's mother was one of Jim's students. He was a professor. Luke and Amy are half-siblings. Kat didn't know her husband had an affair with one of his students. She was totally clueless about that part. I'll update when the real results are in, someday not soon though. Not like we need them at this point. What would you advise OP? Let us know in the comments. You like the way these stories are brought to you? If so, I got you covered. More like this on my channel. Thank you for staying till the end. Let me know if you enjoyed this episode. See you in the next one.
You love the girl who loved the man who slipped away under the sun. Open your eyes and you'll understand who broke your back, the ginger man. We are only learning to die.